We'll put it up over here. So we've got the root of 7x plus 25 is equal to x plus 1. So when we're solving a radical equation, we want exactly what we have. We've got a radical that is alone. It's got no other things being added or multiplied. So we're ready to undo this square root. And to do that, we're going to square both sides. So we can square this side. And then everything that we've talked about in pre-algebra on up, if you do something to one side of your equation, you've got to balance it out. You're going to square the other side of your equation. So the left side is what we practiced yesterday. So the square and the square root are going to cancel each other out, and you're left with 7x plus 25. Now on the right side, we have squared a binomial. Now be careful. That doesn't mean you just square both these numbers. It means take the whole base and multiply it out 2 times. And then here we have 2 binomials. So what process are we going to use to multiply that out? We're going to use FOIL. So it's going to be x squared, do my firsts. And then I do my outsides and insides at the same time because they're both going to be x's. So we'll go x times 1 is 1x. 1 times x is 1x, which adds together to make 2x. And then 1 times 1 is 1. Adds together to make 1. Now what we did there when we FOILed is we've now changed this into a quadratic equation. So we have that x squared. And x squared quadratic equations are going to have 2 separate solutions. So we are going to go ahead and solve out, find both of those separate solutions. To solve a quadratic, this is going to review what we started talking about in chapter 4 and 5. We're going to get everything set equal to 0. So I'm going to bump these 2 things over. So I'll get 0 on this side equal to, I subtract 7x, and then I subtract 25, excuse me. And I'm going to get 0 equals, I go x squared minus 5x, and then minus 24. So now I've got everything on the right side of my equation set equal to 0. I'm now ready to factor my trinomial. And if I have a trinomial, it's going to factor into 2 binomials. And these are all set up to be nice and be able to factor. Since it's a x squared, we're going to have an x and an x. And now our only job is to find out what 2 numbers would multiply to negative 24 and add to negative 5. So we're looking at numbers that multiply to 24 that are 5 apart because we need that difference to be negative 5. And to do that, that's going to be negative 8 and positive 3. So there would be our 2 factors, x minus 8 and then x plus 3. Then we're going to use the 0 product property, which would mean set both of these equal to 0, but you can do mental math. What number minus 8 is equal to 0? That's going to be 8. What number plus 3 would equal 0? That's going to be negative 3. So there's going to be our 2 solutions. Now, not so fast. Those are 2 solutions, but since we're dealing with a square root, square roots are special. They only take certain types of numbers. They can only... underneath the square root has to be positive because you want to stay in the real number system and in this type of problem. And then secondly, you cannot take a square root and get a negative answer. So what we're going to do is we're going to take and we're going to check both of these results. So we got to check to see if maybe one of those is extraneous, which means it's a false solution. So first, I'll take the 8. I'm going to put the 8 in. On this side, I'll put the 8 in on this side. Sorry, it's kind of sloppy. But 7 times 8 is 56 plus 25 is going to be 81. So this side ends up being the square root of 81. And this side ends up being 8 plus 1, 9. So is the square root of 81 equal to 9? Yes. So the 8 is going to check. Next, I'll put negative 3 in there. So we'll check that. 7 times negative 3 is negative 21. Plus 25 is going to be 4. So I get the square root of 4. On the right side, I get negative 3 plus 1, which is negative 2. So now you're asking yourself this question. Is the square root of 4 equal to negative 2? No, that is not going to be equal. So since that is not equal, that means that negative 3, that's a false solution. So negative 3 would not be one of my solutions. I am not going to use it. When I answer, I'm just going to put in my answer of 8. I'll submit, and we'll see the work, and you'll go through and you'll see right here when they checked -3. -3, there it is. They checked it. It doesn't work, so we're going to reject that answer. So that would be that extraneous solution. And then the 8 obviously worked. That's the one that we checked as well. So your solution is 8. So when you're getting into square root equations, when you get those two solutions, if you get the quadratic, you could either have both of them work, only one of them work, or sometimes neither of them work. So you're going to have to check your answer. If neither of them work, you can just submit the box blank on Delta Math, and that's your answer. So your answer is just a blank answer because there is no solution. So you're not going to type in no solution or anything. You can just submit your box blank. So that's the process when we start looking at these square root or the square root equations that have variables on both sides. We'll get into those quadratics and possibly have 2 answers, 1 answer, or no answers. Then lastly, we'll take a look at one that goes into level 3. And thanks for your patience here while I erase this. So lastly, we'll look at when we have square roots on both sides. And a lot of the same techniques and skills will be used. So here I have a square root of x minus 2 is equal to square root of x minus 5. Now I told you yesterday, let's try to get that square root isolated. Well, here we do have that minus 2 hooked up to it, so we could add that over, but then we'd have the same thing going on the other side. So we're just going to leave it. But we do have this side, we do have our radical isolated. And we're going to square it to undo. So we're going to have a x minus 5 on the right side. And then the left side, we do have to square the left side as well to balance my equation. But here, just like before, I've got a binomial. So this is going to be x minus 2 times another x minus square root of x minus 2, excuse me. So we do need to FOIL that out. So we'll use a couple of our skills with FOIL and then also the rules of how square roots work. So my firsts are going to be square root of x times square root of x, which ends up being x. My outsides are negative 2 roots of x. My insides are negative 2 roots of x, which would add together to make negative 4 roots of x. So again, I did the O and the I of FOIL just at once. The outsides will be negative 2 roots of x. Insides negative 2 roots of x. They're going to add together to make negative 4. And then lastly, negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. From there, we've now got another radical. We'll start to isolate that. So we'll get the 4 moved over, subtract it, get the x moved over. We'll have negative 4 roots of x equals, well, the x's are going to cancel, and then negative 5 minus 4 is going to end up being negative 9. Okay, next we'll divide by negative 4, divide by negative 4, and we get the square root of x is equal to 9/4. And then to undo that, we're going to square both sides, square, square, and then we'll get our answer of 9 squared is going to be 81. And let me write that out, 81, and then 4 squared is going to be 16. So I'm going to get 81/16. And just a reminder on how to do a fraction, we'll go 81 over 16, and then that will be our result. Okay, and then they'll go through the process, the work. They used a decimal, I guess. If you wanted to, you could do that as well. But even if you do get it right, it's a good idea. Just kind of check their work. You might pick up some tips and tricks on your own algebra. But more or less, it's the same as what we did. So that's at 12:35 here. So if you are ready to work on your own, you can go ahead and do that. I'm going to stick around. Some of those problems yesterday, if you're still having issues with, I can help you with those if you want to let me know what problem you're working on. But you can start working on today. Today we only have 7 problems, so it's a good idea to just try to knock out a few of those, get some practice with FOIL and factoring. But if you're ready to go off on your own, you can do that. And thank you for joining. And I recorded this session, so it'll be posted on our schedule if you ever need to go back and check it out.